Well, happy New Year. I am Dr. Michael L. Bowie, Jr., the National Executive Director of Strengthening the Black Church for the 21st Century. And I want to say welcome, everyone, to the first Black Church Matters Leadership Forward webinar of 2023. So glad you're here tonight. So if you can, just give yourself a great big round of applause, put some claps in the chat. We're so glad that you are here tonight. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You know, John Maxwell often says that everything hangs and falls on leadership. So I want to encourage you tonight to continue to invest in your leadership and watch God do amazing things in your life because you are a committed leader. So tonight we have a special treat for you, a young man who I know well, and I know he knows a little something about leadership. Amen. Derrick Walker. Derrick Walker is a person who understands the power and the importance of leadership. He is committed to supporting leaders, specifically leaders of faith, to communicate effectively in an ever-changing world. The soul of Derrick's work is birthed out of often being committed to work that shackled his innovation and creativity. And Derrick realized after much reflection that his purpose in life is helping others direct their energy and passion into living on purpose, in purpose, living on purpose, in purpose. I hope he breaks that down a little bit tonight. Derrick is a proud HBCU grad of Arkansas Pine Bluff, and he works at the Dallas Chamber of Commerce as one of the communication gurus to make sure that they fulfill their vision and impact. And also, Derrick did his internship with SBC 21, being in the National Network of Young Adults. So I've seen his creativity. I've seen his leadership in real time. So tonight, Derrick's goal is to equip you with skills to effectively collaborate and communicate between generations. I want to say it again, to communicate and to collaborate effectively between generations. You will also gain an awareness of the cultural backgrounds and communicate the preferences that each generation prefers. And also you'll practice leadership strategies to create successful generational bridges. So tonight, I'm not going to take this thunder. I want to introduce to some and reintroduce to others my friend, brother Derrick Walker. Give it up for Derrick Walker. Take it away, Derrick.
Thank you. Listen, I appreciate that. I feel like I'm stepping into the Grammy Awards or the Emmy Awards with that type of introduction. And send me your cash app.
This is the Emmy Awards of Leadership, baby.
This is the Emmy Awards of Leadership.
Yes, sir.
Send me your cash app. I'll make sure to send you an offering.
All right. Thank you, sir.
For that great and wonderful introduction. No, seriously, I appreciate the opportunity to be welcomed here, to be invited here, and just to really share with you in communication, in community, in purpose, on purpose, and with purpose. And that's about intentionality. And I you know, Dr. Bowie, you asked me to kind of go into it, so I will go into it and just kind of talk about what that is. And when I even saw from Candy with SBC 21, to call this leadership forward is already into the name of what's going on, into the title of what we're doing. It's already active. It's already productive, and it's very direct. It's very intentional. You know what to expect, and you know how to inspect to get what and closer to what you want to be closer to. And so with that, we talked about in purpose and on purpose. And so when we think about leadership, and we think about even purpose, no matter what your purpose is centered around how you lead that, how you're moving forward with that, but also how you are communicating that. And in the communication of where we are just in the world, in the church, in the space of community, there is a common unity, right? Where there's community, there is common unity. Listen, y'all better write that one down.
That'll preach. Where there's
that'll preach right there, right?
Unity. I like that.
Where there's common unity, there is community. And being able to, now we're deconstructing the word communication, right? The name of this course is Effective Intergenerational Leadership and Communication. So real quick, if you would, in the notes, I'd like to see some of the feedback. I know we're not in person right now, but we're gonna move as if we're right here and you can talk with me. This is very much a conversational a dialogue. This is not a monologue. So I want to be as engaged with you as you are with me and can be with me. So real quick, when you see this, thank you for the welcome and just appreciate everybody kind of tuning in. So tell me real quick in the notes, effective intergenerational leadership and communication. what are 2 or 3 things that comes to mind, or 2 or 3 things that make you want to ask more questions about that? Because I really want to be able to respond to what you're interested in and what you want to know. And I think that's part of being effective and being intentional in purpose and on purpose as we kind of lead through and lead with each other through this. I often share with people when I do these workshops, I don't lead followers, I only lead leaders. I don't lead followers, I only lead leaders. So if you're leading yourself, and when you're leading yourself, you are actually showing and modeling what that looks like, right? And how that lives. And so someone can look at you the way we even look at Christ, or identify Christ and how Christ lived, or even other characters and representations in the Bible. We see them as how they are modeling and making decisions and corresponding and living and communicating within community. So real quick, I see some conversations in there. Something that sticks out. I'm swiping through it as well. Being authentic, how to bridge the gap, bridging the gap. I like that. Let's write that down. Bridging the gap. Bridge the gap. I like that. Any other terms stick out? Goal-oriented actions. I like that. The best way to develop intergenerational leadership. Oh, I love that. We're going to get to that right there. The best way to develop. Let's write that down. Develop intergenerational. And I'm a elder millennial, so I'm still writing. I got my notepad writing with me right here, Dr. Bowie. So I want to make sure I get that correct. Develop intergenerational relationships. I like that. I like that. Gotcha. Second, that relationships. All right, let's get 2 more in there. Let me see. Communication with my generation seems to be a problem for me. Miss Jackie, we'll go through that and kind of see problems with communicating. Because every time there's a problem, there's really an opportunity. And when you're leading in purpose and on purpose, the intentionality from that should be an outcome that is favorable, not to just what you desire, but what is going to be effective for moving forward. Have the elder leader be willing to teach the younger. So we'll talk about this. That's mentorship, right? That's mentorship. There we go, right there. What are particular ways of communing? There we go. There we go. Generational communication styles. Gotcha. Some of this we'll address. And Dr. Bowie, if you could, because I start to flow and I might lose a little track of my time, but in my leadership, I ask that you lead through this with me. And I'm sure Stephanie will help me as well. But just keep me in as a good steward of time, understanding levels of intersectionality. There we go. There we go. Perfect. All right, so here we go. Effective intergenerational leadership and communication. You know, everything that everyone wrote is definitely on par with what this conversation is about. I don't even want to say course, but what this community is gathered for, and to talk about not just these topics, but just really what's connecting with you and how you connect with others. That's what we're talking about, connectivity. We're talking about how to have relationships. So, you know, relationships are based on communication and how we communicate, and the way that we understand communicate, the way we understand how to communicate can dictate what outcomes look like and how they exist. So let's go to the next slide real quick. I want you to read this, even if I know you're not here with me, but read it out loud and read it to yourself. And I want you to kind of give me some feedback on this, and I'll read with you. It says, no. And first of all, I love illustrations. I like cartoons because it kind of brings down, it takes us back to a childhood or our adolescent years, and it gives us a chance to kind of see this as not a real person, but also understanding real situations. And so what this is a teacher who is given instruction. This teacher has communicated to the community of people that are gathered in that classroom to one particular student, Jen, and says, no, I said, summarize the book. Now, I said, summarize the book. So once again, the teacher did what the teacher does. The teacher, as the leader or the representation of who's guiding these people forward through their life, through their academics, they've guided and set this up and said, no, I said, summarize the book. Now, Dr. Bowie, I know you're on here. Now, the instruction said, no, the quote says, no, I said, summarize the book. But then if we look at what Jen did Jen follow the instructions?
Yes, she did. She summarized the book. In the summer, you have to wear shades. In the summer, there's sun. And in the summer, I mean, and you have spring blooming. So a lot of things happening in the summer. So she heard what he said, but that's not what he intended.
Absolutely. And there we go. That's the key word. Somebody write down intention. Somebody put in the chat intention, right? Because when we're talking about in purpose and on purpose, there's an intention connected to that. And with that, because there's an outcome that's expected. So we can see that there might be not just some disappointment, but maybe some frustration on the instructors or the leader's face, because he said, no, I said summarize the book, but without the proper context and without the proper understanding of his outcome that he expected for her didn't align with the outcome that she expected based on her understanding from his leadership. So some would say, well, she's wrong, right? But someone else may say, well, that instructor or that leader is wrong. And so now it's not about right or wrong. Let's take it away from right or wrong. Let's go to the term effective or not effective. So is what the instructor did, was that effective to get to the outcome that he was expecting? And the answer that we would have to presume is that he did not expect that, because he said, no, I said summarize. Now, when we hear the term summarize, it goes into one understanding and one meaning. But when we see the word, it might create another type of understanding. So now what we're talking about is the written leadership or written communication, but also the spoken communication. Now what we're talking about, once again, is nuance and understanding, like what I think what we talked about, generational communication, not just generational, but looking at the generation as a whole, or the generations as a whole, but also looking at the breakdown or the segment or the understanding of how they communicate, or how communication happens within your leadership, within the people who you are following. So we can have opinions and ideas about what's happening from a broad standpoint, but if we're speaking with one person and instructing one person, we have to also remember that there are some things that we might not be considering that they may be considering, and vice versa. So in communication, there's a dual responsibility. Somebody put responsibility, right? And leadership is based on maturity, based on how you're able to be more responsible. Responsibility leads to maturity, and maturity is what guides leaders to guide other leaders. And so when we look at understanding that as a framework, just as a basis of moving forward with leadership, with communication, with conversation, we understand that there are nuances, and we have to be willing to move beyond just what we think, what we know, and what we believe, but really deal with what's actual right there. Now, real quick, my grandfather is a minister. One of my favorite sermons he preached was about Peter getting in the boat, and the instructions that Jesus told them about getting in the boat and go to the other side. And from that, there's always a talk about, Peter walking on the water and the great miracle of faith and that. But if we really go back to what happened just before those instructions, the responsibility of the leadership that was given to Peter and the remaining disciples was to get in the boat and go to the other side. So if they merely would have followed the directions of getting into the boat and getting to the other side, there would be less worry or concern about the clouds being low, the dark skies, the waves that are tumbling. There's no need necessarily for the faith in that standpoint, because you've been clearly communicated with what to do and what the expectation was. But there is also this thing called grace, where Jesus showed up and said, you know what? He got the instructions, they got the instructions, but I'm going to show up and reveal to them. I'm going to have some empathy with them. I'm going to have some understanding with them about how what I communicated is not happening the way I expected. Right. So at that point, Jesus is inspecting what he's expecting from the people, because he has a particular outcome, but because he needs them to get to the other side. So that's where the whole miracle of faith comes in, and working with your people. And just as a framework, sometimes we have to be willing to work with to get through in order to get to. And so just understanding and really using this narrative of this cartoon to set the framework to say, here's how we are effective with our leadership, with our communication, and making sure that regardless of what the generation is, what the opinion is, or what the conversation is, that we're very intentional, we're very specific, and we're very in tune with what's happening to and with the people within our community that we're communing with. Is that clear? We got any questions real quick? I kind of got in the flow, but Dr. Bowie.
That was good. No, that was good, man. That was a good flow, and what I believe, and as probably go to the next slide, is Jesus probably didn't talk about the storms that was coming, because they weren't mature enough to handle it.
There we go.
I mean, I like you said, mature and responsibility, but I'm gonna leave that alone. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're talking about, is how we're connecting with the people. So, in business, when I do these seminars, and I think we can talk about my father's business and the responsibility of doing a good steward. We have to understand how to professionally network, and networking is one of the key ways of making sure that we pay attention and identify how we connect with the people. And so faith, and I'll go ahead and read this. Faith leaders will be exposed to a professional context and have the opportunity to share ideas and experiences with other professionals from around the world. So when we talk about professionals, we're talking about the manner in which we engage with the people of faith, right? And how we connect with that, and how we are able to make sure that we're very relational. I say in business, we do business with people we like, we trust, and that we're familiar with. So when we get and put ourselves in a space to be familiar, to gain trust, to have a relationship with, those are things that help bring down some of those walls of uncertainty, those walls of fear. Just like Peter had, it creates a situation where, yes, I see the storm in this person. Yes, I see the challenge, or yes, I don't necessarily agree with that, or that doesn't fit with what I would do. But I'm also have a willingness and a commitment to communicate with my community because of my responsibility, and my maturity allows me to be able to do that, and sometimes remove myself out the way as the block to make that happen. So I'm going to go into real quick an icebreaker professional. And so we're talking about, if you write this down, relational communication. And I want to go into the next slide. Sometimes we know, what outcome we want. We know the thing that we want to happen, but we don't always understand how to do that. And I think questions are the gateway to better understanding. So when I don't understand something, even when we get into this space where we're leaders in faith, but this is not where we normally function within our lives, I think it's important to have a script. If we talk about a script, Dr. Bowie, I think the Bible is a significant script for many of us. So as understanding that script exists to kind of be led with, I've developed some questions to kind of build a script to understand how to introduce yourself, but also how to connect with other people. So real quick, right. I will go through this. Number one, and you all answered this within within the chat as well. So I wanted to be really participatory, as well as screenshot this if you need to. Candy, Stephanie, if we can make sure everyone gets these slides in particular, screenshot this. But I want you to be able to answer these questions as you understand how to engage and talk with and connect with your community. Which one of the target groups of people do you work with most? Now, Dr. Bowie, being with SBC 21, I would presume because the name of it is Strengthening the Black Church, you're connecting with Black church
Black leaders, pastors, laity, young adults, everybody in the Black church.
Right. Yes. All right. So write that one down. Just put, and then we want to keep these answers as short as possible because Dr. Bowie, in preaching, you understand the benefit and the opportunity that happens when you're very concise and straight to the point. So yes, let's get that. So like I said, if you have a list, keep it short. So I see Sherry, you wrote in youth in the church, the adults and seniors. Sherry, I need you to be a little more specific. Tamara, I think you've got it. You're right there. College age students, Black leaders. Now let's go back to this. I see Anissa put white men. So let's go back to this. Now, if you're talking with this person, would you say this to them? And how do you think it would feel to be categorized by the language that you just used? Right? So how you communicate that to yourself is also how it shows up with them. So if you say, I haven't worked with white men, the question is, would you say that with them? And I'm sure you might not. And so let's be a little more specific and use terms that connect with people versus looking at things that separate the people. All right. So let's try it again. Mid to elderly, older adults, young men. And it's rather interesting, Dr. Bowie, how when we talk about these demographics, we often go to the vanity aspect of what that is.
Hey, yeah.
Right. So what if we answer this question with which target group of people do you work with mostly? I work with believers. What if we started there? What if we started with believers? Because here, believe it or not, I'm talking in the church. I'm also talking in life, right? I'm talking in the church and in life. So how do we segment people for ourselves is how we communicate that with other people. So if we refer to them as that, would you say to an atheist, I work with atheists who do this? You may not say that. And so our framework, or how we frame, how we communicate the narrative is very, very important. is very significant. I work with believers and non-believers, right? Now, if you're talking with someone who may not fit into that category, how do you connect with them? And we can get into specifics of that. But let's for the sake of this, let's go through the exercise. Let's talk, Dr. Bowie. We speak with faith leaders in faith, right? All right, let's go to number 2. The number 2 question is, what is the biggest hurdle? What's the biggest hurdle do they normally deal with the most? What's the biggest hurdle they normally deal with the most? What's one thing that a lot of faith leaders that you work with deal with the most, Dr. Bowie?
How to be effective.
Being effective.
Yeah.
So being effective. So we got faith leaders being effective. Now let's be a little more specific. Effective
being effective in worship, having effective worship.
There we go.
Effective communicator, i.e. preaching, effective engagement.
Gotcha. There we go. So now we got with the number 1 answer, which target group do you work with the most? These faith leaders, right? And we want to keep this as concise and specific as possible. From one standpoint, if you're speaking with one person, you want to make it specific to them. If you're speaking with a broad group, it's important to understand your audience. I think that's something else that I want you to take notes on, is know your audience. Be aware of who you're speaking with. Once again, when we go back to the example with the teacher, you have to know your audience. You have to know where their understanding is. You have to be aware of what their likes are, what their preferences are. So you might have to do a little research.
Right.
Right.
Hey, Derrick, I want to borrow some. I saw some pop up in the chat. I shouldn't look in the chat. It's like cheating, but open to new things. Being open. That's one of the biggest hurdles I deal with. Being open to new opportunities and new ways of doing ministry. And
open to new ways. Right. And that's a part, Dr. Bowie, you did something that's very key as a leader to say, you know what, this is something I actually deal with myself, which is why I'm working with these individuals or these groups or people like you or people like us who have these challenges. It's much like comedy. If you notice, if the better comedians having the ability to kind of talk about themselves in a way that's not necessarily the best or what many would do, but it opens them up to be vulnerable in a certain standpoint. And when we're talking about particularly with faith and leadership and people being willing to lead with you, you have to be able to show an air of vulnerability with that. And Dr. Bowie, that's a key note to consider. Now we're going to continue with number 3. What results do you get them? So give me, Dr. Bowie, 2 results that you get these faith-based leaders with being effective and how you help them overcome not being open.
We help to strengthen the church.
No, right. Give me no. What? So you help them? They get a. So what results?
So I would say they get a discipleship system. They have an intentional system.
So they get a system of discipleship.
Yeah, to be effective in the congregation, also to engage in the community. So they have strategies and systems. They get strategies, systems, and resources to engage in the walls and also to reach out to the 4 walls. So these systems, strategies, and resources help them have a stronger church, but also to help transform their community.
So let's do this. You actually answered number 4. So that goes into what methods, tools, and processes do you use to help them get to success. So let's go to systems,
resources,
and strategies. Let's keep it at 3: systems, resources, and strategies. Now let's go back to number 3. When we talk about outcomes, what outcomes do these resources, these strategies, and these systems get them? Do they get
they get momentum?
Momentum. There we go.
They find joy.
There we go.
They tap into their passion.
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
Renewed.
I see somebody. Synergy. I see some defined reality.
Renewed. Momentum.
Number 3, understanding them self-image and identity through self-reflection. There we go. See, yeah, I like that. That's Tamara. I like that. Y'all give me some good feedback. They get the goal set. That's it. All right. So now, if you would go to so real quick, we answered these 4 questions. Which one of the target groups do you work with mostly? You've been able to answer that. What's the biggest hurdle that you help them overcome? We talked about being effective in worship and leadership, and also being open-minded to new ideas. And what do they get? What results do they get? They get momentum towards a better outcome. Let's say that momentum towards a better outcome, towards better outcomes. And this is very general. And the thing is to be general right now, but on this list, practice it every day. When you have this script, new days and new moments present new opportunities to reframe and answer these questions. I think it's something that we should be asking ourselves every day as leaders. Who are we targeting? Who are we working with? What are we helping them do? What's working right now? What outcomes do we help them get? And so go to number 4. What methods, tools, and processes do you use to help them get there? Now, let's go to the next slide. When I talk about having a script, each one of these answers goes into this script to kind of fill in the blank. So what we will be able to do, let's say, Dr. Bowie, I'm gonna act as if I'm you for a moment. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's say that you're introducing yourself. You're working with these leaders, and people don't know who you are. They want to know more about SBC 21, and not just SBC 21, but who you are. And you would say, not even hello, I am, because I am is related to you as a being, but your name. You want to make sure that it's important to say what your name is, because that's how you're called. That's how you're connected with, and that's just the vulnerable part that keeps our humanity connected. So, hello, my name is Dr. Michael Bowie. I work with faith leaders who are typically having challenges with being effective in worship and who are not as open to ideas as they like to be. I help them to build momentum toward better outcomes, and I do this through systems, resources, and strategies as I work with the organization SBC 21. And so what we've just
been write that down.
Right.
That's good. That's the elevator speech. Hey,
and that you said it.
That's
you
good.
said it right there, right?
I like that.
So now Perfect. We're talking about icebreakers, and so yeah. So we talk about elevator pitches, and I'll go into the icebreakers.
But that was good. Yeah, go ahead.
Right, and even when we talk about icebreakers, questions always help. So even when you're asking yourself as a leader, what am I doing? What's working? What do I do well? What are my people dealing with? How do I help them? How do we help them? How do we support them? We automatically have a way to be very specific, to say something to them that's going to illuminate some connection with you and the possibility for a solution to get closer to the other side. That's the key.
So would this be like a mission statement?
This is not necessarily. It's not like a mission statement. This is what we call an elevator pitch in business. And so different, okay. Right. And so and let's go there, right? Normally, if you go into there, you might say, I'm Dr. Michael Bowie. I'm the director of this. And, we've got these positions, but how many of you are really work only within your title? Right. How many are really paid as well as their title says that they're paid for? So what I'm saying is the titles are not the best way to connect. Just restating a mission that's on your brochure is not the best way to connect, because we're talking about not just people, we're talking about souls. We're talking about faiths. We're talking about people who and their belief systems. We're talking about people who we're looking to instruct and inspire. Right? So we have to be able to connect with them from the start in a way that's very communal, very vulnerable. But also, if you notice, we ask the questions of ourselves first. And as a leader, we have to be willing and challenge ourselves to do the things and ask the questions that we might be asked. And so when we have this script and using the script and answering these 4 questions, it should help you frame that out exactly what it could be. So real quick, I want you to, let me see if I can, what's my purpose? I like that. I'm going to put the 4 questions. Let me see if I can get those into Stephanie, if you could help me out, if you could put those questions and then the script into the chat. I would like everybody to kind of take that and answer those questions, and maybe take a couple minutes to just complete that and fill it out, and then work through this. And just, even if you type it inside of the chat, I'd love to be able to see what that is, because now not only are we introducing ourselves to a new process, but when you put this into the chat, it's going to instantly give someone insight about what you're doing, who you work with, how you do it, and the results that you get them. And so this is an instant networking opportunity. This is an instant connectivity. This is what we call engagement. This is what we call, the name of it escapes me right now, evangelism. There we go. We're talking about evangelism, and how you evangelize is not just telling people and yelling at people what they should do, what they should be, and inviting them. You would never go into a brand new space with a megaphone and yell, I'm Derrick, and I'm a leadership forward instructor, and y'all need to follow me on this page. I would never do that. because that's not a human way and a human approach to making those things happen. And so we want to be very human about it. We want to be very cognizant of the lives that we are impacting, because, different than business, the responsibility of leadership within the church space, those are different stakes, right? We don't get a payoff that exists in the standpoint of money. This is not about making a deal or doing a deal for our benefit. This is about the kingdom work, the kingdom responsibility, and the Father's business of what happens after this.
Hey, Derrick. So this process will be able to connect with any generation. It's non-threatening.
Not just any, Dr. Bowie,
Every
generation,
I mean,
right?
every generation.
Malcolm X said, by any means necessary. I want to elevate where we are to move from to every means available. And so the first part, if you get nothing else from this exercise in this class, I want you to have this script and it's tangible that you can utilize for yourself, but also challenge your other leaders who you're leading with. Ask them, these are questions that we should be asking our organization. Who are we working with? And just see and listen to the types of responses that you get. Because when we talk about a mission, yes, you got this mission statement, but what's being actualized in reality? How is this mission being executed? How is this mission being, what's the effectiveness of this mission, of our duty, of our responsibility and leadership as a community of faith? And so,
Derrick, look at this one. I think it says Dr. Smothers. Look at that. He's to the point. Check that out.
Dr. Smothers, let's see.
Just fill in the blank for him.
Is it in the chat?
Yeah, he said his name is Rodney Smothers. He works with leaders. He typically help people get unstuck, and they receive a path forward, and it happens through strategy for transformation.
Listen, y'all put some fire emojis in the chat for Brother Rodney Smothers. Listen, that is as direct as you can be. I like to say that is generally specific. It's broad enough to encompass everybody, because if I say I've worked with leaders, well, you know what? I feel like I'm a leader. That's about connectivity, right? That's about community. That's about understanding people, right? Getting stuck. So if you say let's man, I wish Rodney could tune in, but let's go through yours, Rodney. Let's say, hello, my name is Rodney. I work with leaders who are typically dealing with getting unstuck. I help them get a path forward through strategy and transformation. The thing about this script is that it sets you up for more questions to be asked. Yeah. And I was talking with our good friend and cohort, Stephanie, before. If you're nervous about going up to people, if you're nervous about leading with people, if you're nervous or just anxious or just not certain about how to connect and just start that conversation, I assure you, a question will help you move to the next step. Hey, what brings you here today? Hey, you know what? Who do you work with the mostly? I see we're here at the same event. I see we're on the same Leadership Forward webinar. Who do you work with the most? What problems do you help them solve? And what they don't realize you're doing is in your teaching, in your leading, you're teaching, you're instructing, but also through that instruction should be inspirational to kind of unlock and illuminate some other possibilities that you didn't even know existed. And so sometimes it's not about who you know, but it's about who knows you and what you are able to do. And so if I know that, man, Rodney helps people get, he's a transformational leader. He helps people get transformational outcomes. He helps people to get unstuck. What does he do? Because we don't need your mission. We don't need your title, because your title and your mission really doesn't encompass fully, with respect, what you do and the outcomes that you really get. And so when we position ourselves as leaders to communicate very specifically and have a good, solid understanding of what we do, how we do it, how we reach, who we do it with, and the outcomes that we get them, oh man, everything else is going to be moving uphill from there.
Hey, Derrick, let's do one more at Marilyn Thornton. And Marilyn would be a good example of how to condense her. She said, my name is Marilyn Thornton. I work with a church that consists of elderly saints and college students in North Nashville. Our biggest hurdle is having the time and energy to do everything in our imagination. I help them by being empathic with their situation, but keeping them Folks
Oh,
just
I'm
left.
sorry. Did y'all see
Yeah.
me playing the violin?
Yeah.
I was playing the violin.
So Maryland, you just an example. So go ahead, Derrick. How would you break that down for Maryland? Help
Absolutely, Maryland. Let's break this down. I hope you're able to go back and look at this video. But I'd go through and say, hi, my name is Maryland. I wouldn't even give a last name. That's too formal. Let's bring it down some. Hi, my name is Maryland. I work with saints and college students who have a hurdle of, let me see, our biggest hurdle is having time and energy to do everything in our imagination. I help people overcome the hurdles that stop their imaginations from happening. I help them through empathy and their situation to keep track with projects and be in agreement with themselves, right? And I'm saying let's bring it less from a church. Let's just deconstruct. Yeah. I didn't want to say church,
but guess what? We connect with people who don't know Jesus and who aren't in the church, so we can't speak church Christianese,
and that might not even matter to them.
Right.
And so sometimes in our language and how we position ourselves, I might get some people, listen, Dr. Bowie, if some people log off, don't be upset. But sometimes your church and your title don't matter to that person.
And Derrick, guess what? Sometimes the cross and flame people aren't denominational loyal. So yeah, you own it.
It doesn't matter if we're talking about being effective, because if the outcome is to bring them closer to Christ, well, no matter where they are, there's always an opportunity to be what? Closer. And so how does our language, how does our communication help guide them, inspire them, and instruct them to be closer? And so we want to use language that's going to help them to guide that. And we're going to get through it. I know what Dr. Bowie, what's our time looking like?
You're good. Now go to the next slide. This is excellent.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. I appreciate y'all's work on this.
This is good.
All right. So that was where we went through relational communication, and we went through the icebreaker and the elevator pitch as it relates to what we do. The next one is cultural competency. Let me go to my slide. Oh my God, I got some scriptures I want to put in there before we leave. But I want to put some scripture in there that relates to what we're talking about.
You got about 20 minutes, so you're good. So
I got 20 minutes. So let's get we got 4 more slides, 4 more sections. Let's give me about 5 to 7 minutes.
5 minutes a slide.
And we'll go. All right, cultural competency. Faith leaders will become more comfortable and confident with using culturally appropriate language, stories, and other communication techniques to foster integration and collaboration. Is that some of that? That's what we went through. And there's a scripture I have, Proverbs 15:1. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Right. And just as we talked about, just what we saw in the previous exercises, sometimes talking about your church or talking about faith or just not bringing in ideals and situations that may separate them, that may not be effective, right? It may not be what you feel like you should do, but once again, we're talking about what outcomes we're getting and how effective it is. So let's go into Proverbs. Yes, Proverbs 15:1. Absolutely, Miss Maryland. Thank you. So now let's go into that. So over 90% of our communication is actually nonverbal. And so the reason we went through a verbal exercise is so that we could understand how to have this script to communicate with intention. But how many times has our body language, has our nonverbal communication shown up? And so how do we do that? What is, and even put in there, when you think about nonverbal communication, what do you think about? How does that look? And I will promise you, sometimes facial expressions, absolutely. And I always say, sometimes people say, well, we need a business card, or we need our website, or we need our this brochure, this pamphlet. But I assure you, a smile is better than any business card. I assure you, a warm embrace is more effective than a brochure. And so when we talk about body language, particularly in a space of vulnerability related to faith, we have to be aware of our body language, how we're moving, how we're standing, how we're using our hands. I'm a hand user, right? How that works and how that connects to people. Is it something that brings them closer to us? And when I say closer to us, not necessarily in proximity, but just what helps us be more connected. Because a connected church is a community church, is a leading church, right? And so we have to be aware of our body language to make sure that our body language is communicating with intention, in purpose and for purpose, on purpose. So what does that look like and how is that connected? And at any point, guys, listen, if you got questions You want to put that in the Q&A. If you've got some more questions you want to put in the chat, that's fine as well. But I love your feedback. It lets me kind of know. It helps me if we're all on this journey together. Your questions help illuminate the path forward, right? So I appreciate that. Eye contact is another good one. Y'all keep throwing these out. What are some other things that you can do that help reassure people? Because when we're talking about leadership, we're talking about reassurance because of the uncertainty, because faith is even on the spectrum of not certain, as that it may be in our imagination, it may be a thought, it may be a thing that we're thinking. And so that is not tangible. So we want to be able to reassure them. How we connect, how we dress communicates something about what they expect from us, with us, right? And so those are all what I call the vanity aspects of communication or nonverbal communication. But let's go here, Dr. Bowie, my God. Tell me when you think about what is not just your body language, but what is your spiritual language?
I think that I love smiles. I think a smile, it breaks the any generation, young person, seasoned person. I think when you smile, you kind of disarm them. It shows that you're not threatened.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think what I've learned, I can tell one thing about Zoom. I'm always trying to be conscious of what am I communicating to my staff, and they can kind of tell how I'm going to come based on before I even say it. So I have to always watch that. My wife even says it. It's kind of like, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Even before I say it, she said, "What's wrong with you? It's all on your face." I'm like, dang, So
Yeah.
I'm not a poker player. I show it all. Go ahead.
And I think that's the part of vulnerability, is that you're not covered, right? Like from a spiritual standpoint, you're spiritually available. You're vulnerable to connecting with people because that's where and how we connect with our humanity. Dr. Bowie, that I do a lot with video and television and documentaries, and I often tell people that the camera is like the eyes, right? And it not only captures what you say and what it sees, but also what you're feeling. Right. So we as people in faith, we as people in the spiritual space can also actually feel and sense what you're feeling. We can feel those opinions. We can feel those other blocks. We can feel those other challenges that you hold within you. And that's called projecting. So how are we projecting? What is our nonverbal communication? What about nonverbal, our spiritual language? We got body language, yes, but what is our spiritual language saying and communicating and connecting with people as we engage with them all the way around? So this is good. I like, Robert, what you said, being present.
As you go to the next slide, Derrick, on the Zoom, and it just hit me, man. I'm looking at you in the window, and they like, Dr. Bowie ain't giving eye contact. So I need to look into the camera. And they probably say he's not doing it. So I had to catch myself. So if I'm trying to engage somebody to get a big grant, hey, you know what? We're doing this, we're doing that. So I'm looking at you right now. But guess what? I was looking at you on the screen. And anyway.
Yeah, and listen, and so let's go there, right? Some of that is about perception, right? Just because it looks one way, I have a quote say, "Perception achieved, reality believed." And so whatever the perception is, oftentimes when we talk about
that again, so they can put that in the chat. What perception?
Perception achieved, reality believed. From that standpoint, it means that whatever is most often perceived, that is the reality that's believed. So if they look at someone and says, "I don't like them," then they're going to believe that you don't like them, right? And so whatever that perception is oftentimes believed. Now, this has nothing to do with whether it's true or not, or whether it's like we said about the cartoon, whether it's right or wrong. This is about perception. This is about what they're seeing. So, Dr. Bowie, your standpoint, you knew what you were seeing because you were looking at me. But if somebody else was looking at you, looking at me, they would think that you were being disrespectful.
I'm not giving you eye contact.
Right, but they can't. They've let go of the vulnerability of being wrong, of possibly being wrong, right? And asking you, and I love questions. Questions illuminate the road ahead. Dr. Bowie, it looks like you're not looking and paying attention to Derrick. You're not giving him eye contact. Are you okay? Is something happening? Is there something I can help you with, right? And those are things and questions to ask. I often say, actually to my nephews, I say, ask me before you assume. And once again, we're talking about leadership. We're talking about communication. We're talking about community. Ask me before you assume of me. Right. And so we can get more into that. But like I said, I appreciate this feedback, and I like the networking that's happening. Everyone's sharing emails and connecting and doing that. So that's good. So we're going to go to that was cultural competence. Let's go to the next slide. Adaptive leadership. And that's kind of what we talked about. And I don't know if you all can tell, but everything that we're talking about, we've already kind of spoken about it before, but we're putting a frame around it to give better context so you understand how to communicate that. So real quick, adaptive leadership. Leaders will learn to adjust their leadership strategies based on the context and the cultural needs of those they are leading. Right? So the scripture that comes to mind, let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. That's Colossians 4:6, but let me read that again. I think that was really important. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. So that goes to me for the two types of leadership that I say, and I use this in my day-to-day work and just even with my family and just conversations. I want to know what you are expecting or what. So once again, how I ought to answer. I want to make sure that I am expecting. I'm inspecting what I'm expecting, not only of me but of the person that I'm communicating with and in leadership with. And so it comes down to two types of leadership. I want you to write these down. The first type of leadership is cooperative leadership. Cooperative leadership. The next type of leadership is collaborative leadership. So two types of leadership, collaborative and cooperative. And Dr. Bowie, if you want to jump in, you let me know if y'all want to jump in and tell me when you see that, what kind of the first thing that kind of came to your mind, the two types of leadership, collaborative and cooperative.
By yourself and with somebody else.
There we go. I mean, that's absolutely, you're spot on, right? And that's about how we communicate what those styles are and understanding how to adjust. And listen, we as leaders, leading leaders, we know that sometimes things are very collaborative. We want to involve the feedback from everybody. We want everybody to be to contribute and share their perspectives, share their ideas, share their experiences, right? And we have to make space and create space and time for that to happen and for that to be intersectional in our leadership. There we go. Sherry White says working together versus self-engulf. I think we're on the right track. I would go maybe a different word instead of self-engulf, shared learning, shared wisdom. I think those are definitely good. When we talk about the collaborative, that's sharing, right? There are also moments in leadership where we need you to be cooperative. We need you to cooperate with the instructions given, not because we don't want to involve you, not because we don't want to include you, but we might be trying to keep you safe. Imagine what would have happened or what the story would have been if Peter would have cooperated with the instructions that were guided by Jesus. Get in the boat, go to the other side. I just need you to follow this next step with me. Go with me. I may not know what's coming up next, or I may be working through something to prepare you for what's coming up next. But in this moment, I need you to go to the other side. And even using this same story, what many don't realize is before the miracle of Peter walking on the water in faith, Jesus had just committed and executed another miracle with the two little fish and that bread. And so after he had done this great thing and this great celebration and performed this miracle, Jesus said, listen, I need a moment to myself as a leader. I just did this work and we just did this work. We collaborated. I need a moment to myself. And he went away. He went to the banks of the river. And that's when Peter and the rest of the disciples came looking for him. Jesus, what's going on? What's next? Oh, somebody said, preach. Listen, if you say preach, I'm going to put my cash up in there, Dr. Bowie. But listen to what I'm saying. When we're working together, we're collaborating, sometimes you've got to create some space for yourself as a leader. There are certain things that you cannot do the same way around your congregants, around the others you are leading with, the way that you would do by yourself. And that's just understanding nuance. That's understanding perception, because, right? Yes, I wasn't Dr. Bowie. Yes, Dr. Bowie was very intentional in listening and paying attention, but everybody else saw it as if he was being disrespectful. And now there's communication and conversation and stories about something that's not even accurate. And so let's get back to that. I feel like I derailed a little bit, but when we're talking about is collaborative leadership and cooperative leadership and understanding how to communicate that expectation on the front end, so you're not bit on the back end, right? And say, hey guys, listen, this is a collaborative moment. Let's take about 5 to 10 minutes. I'd love to get all your ideas. Let's do a brain dump and just put everything on the paper. Cool. All right. Now, listen, we're going to take this information. We're going to work with our specific leaders in a specific department or within their expertise. And we're going to come back and we're going to give you two options. We would love for you to be able to cooperate with us at that point. So now we've communicated what's going on. I'll use a quick story of my nephews. I talk with them all the time. Hey, what do you want to do? Listen, let's work together on this. You want something to eat? I don't know what I want to eat. Let's figure it out. And sometimes we'll go through the list of what they want, Chick-fil-A, and I'm like, you know what? That's not an option right now. So because we can't in this collaborative effort, we're not getting to the result that we need within a time frame that I know we're aware of, that I'm aware of as a leader. I need you to cooperate with me. So we can either do this, or we can do this, or we can do this. But let me tell you what helps make that better: the communication. And listen here, first of all, remember, communicate on the front end. I like that. Communication is nature. So whether you say something or not, you're communicating. What we're talking about, and what I just shared with that story, an example is with my nephews, is conversation. Conversation is maturity. Conversation is responsibility. Conversation is intentional. Conversation is in purpose, and conversation is on purpose. That's about the intent. So what are we doing with our conversation to make sure that we're leading in an effective way? All right, let's go to the next slide. I got excited. We talked about adaptive leadership, but that part of adaptive leadership is understanding how to maneuver and move within the responsibilities that you're aware of, and your leader and your constituents, or those who you are leading with, may not be aware of. And so one, like I said, if it's collaborative, you can share that with them. If it's cooperative, you can let them know, hey, this time I need you guys to listen and just do what I'm asking. All right, here we go. What's the next slide? Oh, that's adaptive leadership. Here we go. Any questions? Any questions, conversation, thoughts? We just did adaptive. There we go. Cross-generational insights. Any questions at any point, any thoughts, please share with me. You can put in the notes in the chat. Dr. Bowie, how much more time do we have?
We got about 4 minutes, but I give you about 6 minutes.
Give me 6 minutes. 6 minutes, right. I'm on. All right.
6 minutes, Derrick, you on.
I'm on. Cross-generational insights. Faith leaders will develop a better understanding of the various generations and their approaches to communication, which will give them insight and awareness they can use to bridge generational gaps. That's one of the things we put that I saw in the notes, was bridging the generational gap. And listen, the first thing is that to really, when we talk about that, is when we talk about these gaps, is it necessary to build a bridge, right? Because let's say there's a land, the Mississippi River. Do you need a bridge? The first thing is understanding what your options are, right? Sherry says not always. There may not need to be a bridge, because if I could, before there were bridges, and we kind of go back to the initial types of communication that happens, we can talk about smoke signals, right? We can talk about pigeons. We can talk about the advancements of, even now to this day, a cell phone. I mean, at some point it was a pager. So all these are communication devices that are used, that are utilized to communicate. So one, the question is, do we need a bridge? Because the bridge may not be the best solution. And so when we're very intentional and we're doing things on purpose and within purpose, we're going to look for the most effective way, the most available way, like I said earlier, not just by any means, but by every means available. So when we see what's available, how do we utilize that? Watching and listening, there we go. And so what I deduce from that, is just within consideration of time, is diversity. And that's cultural diversity, relational diversity, but not just diversity from the metric standpoint, the vanity standpoint, but the diversity of thought. How do my leaders think? What do my leaders believe? These still go back to the questions that we started with at the very beginning, is how to bridge the gap. Is sometimes to realize that it may not be a bridge that we need, because they may be fine where they are. But when with time, with intention, with opportunity, we build a means to do that, and we can do that collaboratively. You don't have to assume the entire responsibility of bridging a gap, because there may not even be a gap. I love Sherry. Sherry, have I told you I love you? I love you, Sherry. Listen, meet people where they are. That is absolutely that. And not only meeting people where they are, allow them to meet you where you are. And that's about creating that intersection. I like to call that third space, because you got one group, you got another group, and then when we cross that intersection, we create something, a new space. We create a new opportunity, a new moment, a new possibility. And even when you get that no, I want you to reframe that no as to not just be NO, but look at that NO as a new opportunity to connect, to engage, to be vulnerable with, to say, you know what? It's not even about judging or not. It's, hey, let me just tell you some of the things I'm working with and how my community has helped me overcome them. How many times have we led from that standpoint of bridging that gap from a cultural relationship? You know what? Listen, you know, my community of faith, have supported me because I've had some challenges working in corporate America and adjusting to how to do the nuances of being in corporate America. You know what? Listen, they've helped me do this, and be that testimonial. Be the living testimonial that shares not just how you help other people, but how people have helped you. I do have it. I'll share it with you. It's in my notes. I'll share that scripture with you. But that's kind of what we're talking about from that standpoint. I think I've got one more slide. We're talking about generational. There we go. Let's see what that one is. Improved communication skills. Let me go to that real quick. I appreciate y'all's patience with me.
Yeah, this is good. You bring it on home.
Bring it on home. Bring it on home. Let's see. I'm trying to find my notes. Let me get to my notes. Improved communication skill. Faith leaders will be able to recognize and utilize communication preference of individuals from different generations, start open and non-judgmental conversations, maintain an understanding, appreciation for culture and diversity. And so now what we're talking about are our biases and our blocks, right? What are our perceptions? Like I said, we talked about a lot of this already. I'm just kind of going through the order, but we talked about our perceptions, right? What is the perception that we have of this person? And are we willing to be wrong about that? Are we willing to say, you know what? I thought this, but I see that the reality is this. How willing are we able to do that, not just with others, but how do we practice that with ourselves? Right? Leadership starts within. The way you lead yourself is the model, is the example for how others are going to follow and lead with you. And so how do you have biases about yourself? What are your personal blocks? And so when we talk about communication, it's not just with other people. It starts within. And so when we talk about asking these questions, it's not to ask someone else, but to ask yourself. And I like to call this my overflow method. You take this overflow principle, and you take these cups and you line them up. And you got 1 cup, you got 2 cups, you got 3 cups, and you fill that cup, and you're the first cup. When you fill yourself up so much with certainty, with understanding, with perspective, with authenticity, with truth, with honor, dignity, that overflows into every single thing else you do. And so when your cup runneth over, as you being the cup, you are filling yourself up, right? Not just with, I don't say gassing yourself up, but you're filling yourself up with something of sustenance. And so even as you fill yourself up, you lift yourself up to higher heights, to a different perspective, to a perspective that allows you to be considerate of those who you're in leadership with.
So Derrick, what I hear you say, and so people, this will be recorded about a couple of days. We'll have it on YouTube. We'll have it on our sbc21.org website. So go check that out. But Derrick, you said something, man, and it really blessed me. So a lot of pastors on this call, they say, I just can't connect with them young people. It's about communication. So it's not about what they're wearing. It's our perception. It's what we bring, our biases, that hinders the relationship from building.
Absolutely. The biases are the block.
Wow. And
the biases are the wall. Like when we talk about a church, a church without walls, it's not just something that's existential of who we are. We have to be willing to bring down those walls, to break those barriers, to remove those structures that benefited us at another point, and see that it's ineffective right now. So
let me do something right now. And you're a leadership guru right now. I'm looking in the camera. What would you say right now? You have about 4 generations in the church right now. You have some traditionalists, you have boomers, you have Gen Xers. I'm gonna say boomers, Gen Xers, that's my generation. You got millennials, and you have Gen Zers. So how would a baby boomer, which is like 65 to 75 right now, maybe still in leadership, wants to connect with the Gen Z person who's 26 to be involved in leadership? Give them one quick example how to make that connection. I didn't say bridge, to build that relationship, that boomer and that Gen Zer. Go.
Absolutely. When we talk about boomers, when we talk about Gen Zers, we're talking about what often is perceived as a wide gap. But the reality is we're all closer than we really believe we are. Our perception has failed us from that standpoint. And one thing that I know can help not just bridge a gap, but make a connection, is to identify something that they are doing well and guide them. Leadership is guidance. So if you say, listen, man, I really like those shoes. Those are really, tell me, what made you get those shoes? Having an interest in what and who they are will bring down any barrier, will break every wall and create a new space to interact and engage, right? Because you as a person from a particular standpoint, if you're older or even if perceptively you look older, you've got some experiences that they may need to be aware of that they're not aware of. And instead of you telling them, pointing your finger at them and telling them what they didn't do and what they just need to do without relationship, building that, or being intentional about connecting with them and say, listen, I see you where you do this often. Why do you do this? And it becomes a situation where you're finding an interest in those, and then what they can do is share with the response, the feedback with you. And so that is one key way. And honestly, when we talk about leadership and guidance, that's what the younger people, that's what we look forward to. We look forward to the insight, to the perspective. And so we don't have to try to figure it out because you've already done something. You've already, I say legacy and success leaves clues. Be the person who leaves clues to help guide them.
Now say that again. Legacy, say that again for the people in the
Legacy leaves clues.
No, you said legacy for success leaves clues.
Legacy for success leaves clues. Yeah, I said, well, success leaves clues and legacy leaves clues. And so I actually wrote a poem about it. But legacy, whether you want to leave it or not, you're leaving legacy.
And man, you know what? I'm gonna tell you, everybody who's listening, I'm gonna say this, Derrick. We started off with 67 people. Now we're at 69. I'm telling you, most people say, I gotta go. 69 people have stayed on. So do me a quick favor. Let them know how they can connect with you, because this information will be on sbc21.org. Go like our website. So 69 people, I need 69 likes. If you haven't liked sbc21.org, go there, like our Facebook page. But what I want you all to know, this brother said something, and Derrick is 37, 38. I'm 54. I humbled myself. I just learned so much from him in less than 60 minutes. And guess what? He learned from me. And iron sharpens iron. So I just want to say this, man. You said, the biggest thing you said tonight is the gap is not as big as we think.
It's not.
That's why we've created a gap because of fear, because of lack of communication,
because of uncertainty.
Lack of relationship.
It's unknown.
Wow.
It's the unknown. Listen, I appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate you sharing this. Dr. Bowie, if you're interested, I don't mind going. I know we got a formality of being on here. If you want to go to the Instagram, I'll jump on Instagram and we can finish talking through this. Like I said, when we talk about leadership, we're talking about legacy. I even wrote a poem that I recently performed about legacy and what that is.
So what I'm gonna do, what we said, we wanted this to be a fire webinar starting off the year. So I'm gonna ask Candy, how could we shift to the right side, Candy? Either go to the Instagram or our Facebook page to keep this conversation going. 69 people on it. If they probably gonna leave, but if we have at least 3 people go to this next phase, we're gonna respect your time. Derrick, so how can they get in touch with you if they don't go to Instagram now? But let them know how they can get in touch with you, your social media handles. There you go. So it's on the screen.
For sure. And listen, I've got my social media handles. I'm sure if you get back with SBC21, they can guide and direct you. I'm totally committed to the mission of the United Methodist Church and SBC21, Dr. Bowie and his leadership and the entire department. If it's anything that you want, imagine needing from me or with me, I know that there's a way that we're already connected, that we can collaborate and cooperate to take this to higher heights and new opportunities.
Yeah. Hey, Derrick Walker, thank you, my friend. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be honest, I came in thinking one thing was going to happen, but you blew my mind. Seriously. Thank you, brother. And what I learned how to do is sometimes I hear, ready to respond, but I'm listening to learn. So thank you, brother.
Let's do it. Listen, and you know what? Listen, and I know I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I'll jump on Instagram and go live. If you want to follow me at IMDWalk, I'll jump on there and I'll go through this poem that I wrote, and we can just have more dialogue.
Let's do that. So for our baby boomers, I hope you got an Instagram. If you're not, get one tonight. So we're gonna really maximize social media. So Derrick is gonna have a few more nuggets for us, but I want to say thank you all for tuning in to our first webinar, Leadership Forward Black Church Matters webinar of 2023. If this is any indication, y'all, of what's gonna happen 2023, y'all, I am so excited. Matter of fact, my grandma would say, I'm concited. I say, what's concited? She said, excitement to the 10th power. Y'all, I'm so excited what the Lord is going to do through you. We may be in a season of uncertainty, but through your leadership, God is going to lead you out of every crisis to brand new possibilities. So thank you for tuning in. I want to thank everybody on the back end for really navigating this thing. Derrick, thank you for doing audibles and shifting. Want to thank, we got 67 people still on it. We lost 2 people, but thank you, 67 investors in your leadership.
Absolutely.
Everything hangs and falls on your leadership. So with that being said, Derrick is going to go. What's your Instagram handle?
At IAMDWALK. I think it's put into the,
in the chat
right now.
We're going to go to at IAM at DWALK. So what we're going to do, thank you all. Yep. If you had noticed, I believe in leadership. Leadership knows no color. Leadership knows no age. Derrick has given us some nuggets tonight, y'all, to how to have better leadership, which establishes and enhances relationships to get to goals. So, Derrick, thank you, my brother. Thank you all for tuning in tonight, and know that everything hangs and falls on leadership. But we have to understand that it's not as hard as you think. We have to remove the perceptions, get rid of the stereotypes, and be the leader that God has called you to be. Until we meet again next month, may God bless you and may God keep you. Go to sbc21.org, tune in, go to our Facebook page, like it, and we thank God for you, because remember, everything is about leadership. In Jesus' name, amen. Good night.